3:02. I'd like to call today's Rules Administration and Procedures Committee meeting to order. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Chairperson Ron Mormon,
Here.
Vice Chair Emmanuel Yamas, Alderman Edward Bug,
Here.
Alderman Carl Franco,
Here.
Alderwoman Patty Smith.
Here.
4 present.
Thank you. First item on the agenda is approval of the minutes,
So moved.
23-0677. Motion by Alderman Smith, second by Alderman Franco. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes 4-0. Madam Clerk, anybody for public comment?
No, we do not.
Perfect. Okay, let's get right into the agenda here. First item on the agenda, 23-0571, an ordinance amending Chapter 32 of the Code of Ordinances pertaining to peddlers and solicitors. Presentation.
Good afternoon. Jennifer Stalling, City Clerk. So I will be much more brief than the last time. Since we were here last, we did put together and attach to the Legistar item our Exhibit A, which is the proposed amendments to the peddler and solicitor ordinance. We put together just a brief overview, not all of the parts that have been changed, but just the bigger ones that may require some explanation. The first change that we made was that peddlers and solicitors may no longer operate on private businesses or vacant premises, which is a complete change from the way it is now. Any questions on that one?
Quick question on that,
Yes.
Jen. So does that mean, for example, a peddler could not walk through Mariano's parking lot and leave literature on vehicles?
That is not necessarily what this means, but there is a section that does mean that
Okay.
later on.
That was one of my questions for today.
Yeah.
Thank
I
you.
think arguably this could apply to that, but there's one that's much more clear.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And this is just more towards like if somebody just wants to pull off to the side of the road, throws up a sign and wants to sell flowers and or something like that, like a Valentine's Day or something like that.
Similar, more specifically in gas station parking lots, those types of areas. In keeping with that, we have added, we're proposing no outside sales, no outdoor sales. Many of the salespeople from the issue in the previous slide being operating out of private areas or parking lots, we're putting up temporary sales structures, tents, setting up tables, that type of thing. So we are asking that not be allowed, but for the mobile food vendors, which is a whole separate issue anyway. Chapter 49 does allow an example would be a store that's allowed to sell, Home Depot selling plants outside. Special events, 41.5. Special events allow sales for special events as part of the special event. And then any other provision in the code. There are a few areas in the code where, specifically in Chapter 32, where one specifically being if the city specifically authorizes this type of structure, then it's authorized. We are also asking to add a background check requirement for everyone who's going door to door for for-profit sales. This does not include the charitable solicitors.
May I ask a question on that
Yes.
one? So for that, and I know you have every individual, every applicant, so that means everyone who's going out for that particular business is required the background check, but it's good for 3 years. So how do we know next year when they decide to go out that all of their people have been gone through the application part, the background check? You know what I mean? So
Yep.
they lose people and then they get new people.
Yeah. So anyone new has to have their background check. Everybody is required to apply for the permit individually. So even if they have a crew, if a business has a crew out there this year of 10 people, next year the crew is the same, but for 2 people, those additional 2 people have to have their background check done. Everyone has to apply
Okay.
again.
Thanks, because I'm thinking that the main
Yeah.
person applies and it just trickles down to them, but you're saying each individual person has to apply.
Yep, and that's for the for-profit salespeople, not for the charitable solicitors. Are there any questions regarding the rehabilitation aspect of this? As far as excluded offenses and then what the rehabilitation process is, it's laid out pretty clearly in the exhibit. So as far as charitable solicitors are concerned, because it is usually a group, it's not, and usually, not always, but usually they don't go door to door to private homes. We are asking that they not be required to obtain an individual background check, but they have to complete the same affidavit that they currently have to complete, just indicating that no one in their group has a disqualifying offense or is a sex offender. So with respect to administrative actions, we just went through and cleaned this section up a bit so that it's a little bit easier to follow. With respect to suspensions and revocations, and specifically banning, we didn't necessarily have a very clear process for that, so it was a bit difficult for us to take these actions against companies who were repeated offenders. So we're just cleaning that up a bit. And here's the section regarding no materials can be left on vehicles. Previously, it said no materials can be left on vehicles if there's a chance that it could blow off or something to that effect. That's fine, but that's kind of subject to interpretation as well. And if you come across a flyer that's on a vehicle, then it clearly did not blow off, and it wouldn't have been a violation. So,
Until they drive down the road.
right, true. Nobody seems to really like having things left on their vehicles, so we thought this would be a good idea. So with respect to leaving materials at homes, we do receive the complaint frequently that there are companies who take baggies and put rocks in them and put their materials inside the baggie with the rocks so that they will not blow away. This section expressly prohibits that as well, unless you're leaving materials with a person at the home.
Okay, so let's discuss that. 'Cause over the years, we've discussed this many times. So now it says you have to leave it, oh, sorry, with a person, which is excellent. You can't fudge around that. So what I see them saying in response to that, because right now they leave them, they're very strategic. They leave them on the sidewalk, which is in the apron of the driveway. And so they try and say that's city property and not privately owned by the homeowner, because the homeowner doesn't do anything with the sidewalk. Or in the street along the curb in front of the house. So again, their kind of mindset is, that's not your private property. You don't take care of the curb. The city does. So I want it to be like as plain as day to these companies. It cannot be left on public property, sidewalk, street, anywhere. You must put it in the hand of the homeowner.
So,
I think we're getting there, we're going in that direction, but they always seem to find a little way around it somehow.
yeah, I think you're right. The language that is currently in the code, which they have been, as you said, attempting to go around, except by handing or transmitting any such handbill or newspaper directly to the owner, occupant, or any other person present in or upon such private premises. I think that we could look at maybe changing the title of the section, which is manner of distribution on private premises, to public or private premises, I think. I think we don't want anyone throwing things anywhere. So they have to hand it. We can probably change that language to accommodate that relatively easily. I would defer to Ms. Lang, though, if she has any input on that.
I would believe that if they're throwing it in the right-of-way, that could just be a littering ticket.
So maybe we can add some of that language in this section as well.
I'm going
And
to,
I think what we encountered before is, we know who the company is, we've got the items, but we cannot find the person who owns the company. I know we battled one prior to COVID.
Yeah, I think I had communications with one earlier this year that ended abruptly on the phone, so.
Chairman,
Yes.
I have to agree with Alderman Bug on this one because it is very problematic when they do believe that they've thrown it in the skirt of your driveway or perhaps your sidewalk, and does end up in the road because the homeowner doesn't stop and pick it up, and it ends up going out there. And then it does become litter throughout the entire neighborhood. So it is something that's extremely annoying. People do not like it. People will go out and pick it up the garbage day as they're bringing their garbage past. But I don't believe it should be allowed in any way, shape, or form unless they're handing it right to the homeowners themselves.
Alderman Pickle.
So I was gonna go to the littering thing. What, if somebody litters, somebody throws something in the street, some kind of pamphlet, what can we do to them for littering? Because if littering is more extreme, as far as punishment, we certainly wanna leave that in there because you're trying to get around it. Oh, I'm sorry, you littered, that's even worse. Is that something we have or can do, or?
We have the local ordinance on littering, but I'm not sure that the penalties are stiffer than what is in the peddling ordinance.
And how do you prove they
Say
littered?
they didn't do it, it's like trying to sue McDonald's for finding trash on the sidewalk.
Well,
Yeah,
they
how
can
do you
say
prove
didn't
they
do it 'cause it's
littered?
in the driveway apron too. I mean, so
Yeah.
I didn't throw that there. I mean, it must have blown over from somewhere.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I would suggest, I mean, if possible, I think adding some sort of verbiage just to make it crystal clear, like Alderman Bug had suggested, if that's possible, I think that way it's black and white and, I mean, if it's something fairly easy to complete or whatever, but I think making it crystal clear that,
Public and private.
yeah, if
Okay.
it's something as simple as adding that word, I would agree that, and there's no wiggle room there, so.
And I think that's helpful as well to my office. The less interpretation people are allowed to make, better, more clear it is.
So,
So I will, would you like us to come back with proposed language, or is it okay to put that into what we would, if it gets passed with recommend?
I would think with the recommendation, I think we might as well move this forward, so unless legal tells us otherwise that they need to.
If you would just highlight that so that we
Okay,
comes
Yeah.
around next week so that we see it.
I'll make sure it stands out. Okay, thank you. So the next section is, this was proposed by outside legal counsel that we remove the distinction in the definitions between commercial and non-commercial handbills so that we are not regulating based upon the content of the materials. Next is removing the specific reference to political campaign literature and religious materials as being contained as definition under the peddler's ordinance. Those types of door-to-door information providing, they are not peddling or soliciting. So pointing them out is really redundant. And again, we don't want to specifically call out one type of speech over another.
So a political door-to-door can leave campaign literature there
Yes,
without the inhabitant being home.
that's a good question.
This ordinance is for peddling and soliciting.
Yeah. So it does not apply to, the regulations presented in this ordinance do not apply to religious and political materials.
Just making sure. I think there's a few of us here that
It's
may do that, so-
information, Alderman Franco.
Pardon?
We're leaving important information only.
Well, yes, necessary. Critical to the public trust.
Yes.
Informing
It's always informative here, that's great.
And with that, are there any additional questions that we did not cover?
Any questions, comments? from,
Yes.
Alderman Bug?
Thank you. Last time, with the fifth Tuesday, it was a few weeks ago, so, you put in a comparative to other cities, which is very helpful. Some of the other cities had, they had prohibitions on some holidays, which I thought was an excellent idea. I know so many times people are doing their 4th of July, whatever, and here come the solicitors in the middle of your family gathering, Memorial Day, even Labor Day. So a number of municipalities had, call them what you want, the 6 big holidays. I'm not, whatever holidays we pick, I'd be happy with, but yeah, I don't think people, when they're getting together with their families on 4th of July, want solicitor after solicitor
Sure.
with their, interfering with their parties.
And we discussed that as well. We discussed modification of the hours, and based on our working group, we were just going to see what the committee preferred on that, as opposed to making any specific recommendations in our draft ordinance. So I think that if that's something that you think would be beneficial, if just adding that provision and not modifying the other hours that are already in existence, that's a real easy fix.
And we could just, we could say federal holidays, we don't have to name them. I don't think
Yeah.
anybody's coming around on Christmas because it's too cold, but, yeah, just say federal holidays.
Initially, we discussed prohibiting on Sundays as well. Did you just want to stick with the holidays?
I think holidays.
To me, I think when you go Sunday, then you start to get people who ask, why did you pick Sunday? Is that for a religious reason? You should be going down that path. So, me, myself, I would just stick to federal holidays.
In addition to that, I believe if we're saying you have to hand things to people, Sunday is a day that people are going to more likely be home, so we need to, be somewhat fair in this. I guess a fair is the correct word.
Well, and there's a fix for all of this. You put a no solicitor sign on your house, you're done.
Right.
Holiday,
Right.
Sunday, Monday, doesn't
Right.
matter.
Right.
So that's a fix
People
in
have
the
that
system.
option,
Right,
sure.
right, they have that option. So I would say that Sunday, have at it, because if I don't want them at all. And most people, because we go door to door, there's a lot of no soliciting signs, so I think that's an individual fix for them.
Okay, and just for information as well, if we do have no soliciting signs available for the public in my office, just going forward if anybody needs any.
Chairman, may I ask another question?
Certainly.
Something that hasn't been discussed here, and I know it's in the ordinance somewhere, but I just want to make sure it's loud and clear, that each individual person has to wear some form of visual knowledge of who they are, and what are the restrictions if they don't? I mean, is there any, if a company continues to, if they show up to your door and they have no ID and who they are and who they're with, and we report them, is there anything that we can do other than slap them on the hand and say, you're not following the rules? Because that does happen a lot.
So the first answer to your first question is all of the individual door-to-door solicitors that are for profit are issued. Their permit is actually their photo ID with their company name, the expiration date or the effective dates of their permit. They are told that they have to wear that at all times when they are soliciting, and they have to show people if they ask. The penalties for a violation of wearing your ID badge when soliciting or failing to do so. That's going to be an ordinance violation. With the section that identifies more clearly if we can suspend them, revoke them, or ban them. Multiple violations. So the first violation is will probably actually issue a written warning without writing an official violation for them. But if they keep doing it, they add up, and the ultimate remedy for us then is banning them from operating in the city for 2 years.
I'm presuming those who don't wear them or show them are those who have not gone through the process anyways.
Yeah, I mean, it is very difficult if someone comes to your door. The Ring doorbell cameras work wonders for our proof when we need it. But aside from that, it's very difficult if they don't have any identification on. Unless we have some very well-informed residents dealing with them who know what to look for.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any more questions, comments regarding this?
Motion to move it forward?
I would,
I'm
everybody's
good with
forward, I
it.
say move it forward with the changes we suggested. Is that something okay here? Okay, we're all in agreement with that, so all in favor?
Aye.
You have a
Nope, I'm
motion.
sorry.
I'll second the motion.
Yes. Motion by Alderman Smith, second by Alderman Franco, sorry. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Ordinance passes 4-0.
Thank you.
Alrighty, next item, 23-0710, an ordinance amending Chapter 13 of the Code of Ordinances pertaining to the licensure of retailers authorized to sell tobacco, nicotine, alternative nicotine products, and or vape products.
I say, let's do it. No explanation needed.
Love it. Wonderful. This is Good afternoon. Nydia Molina, Assistant Corporation Counsel. Today for the committee's review, we are proposing a few amendments to Chapter 13. The first amendment generally would be to prohibit the sale, delivery, or distribution of any product which contains tetrahydrocannabinol, THC, or any synthetic cannabinoid as defined in Chapter 29-315B, which is already in the ordinances. Obviously, we would then define what tetrahydrocannabinol is and those products, which is the other two amendments to Chapter 13. As we explained in our memo, one of the concerns has been that Delta 8 is being packaged in products that are easily seen in tobacco, vape, other nicotine shops, and are based on the packaging and the information that we have. It's confusing to consumers. It's also, there's concerns as to how that material is tested, how it's regulated. And so we are proposing this amendment to ensure that there are no concerns or issues with who is consuming, who is ingesting these products. We have the Farm Bill that has created somewhat of a loophole to allow Delta 8 to be combined into some of the materials that we noted in our memo. They are been found in gummies, brownies, cookies, bars, energy bars, and again, they're easily accessible with no regulation by the state or the federal government. And so we're asking for this amendment, your consideration to approve this amendment. I do have members of the Aurora Police Department Investigation Unit that can share their personal experience through investigations with respect to the product that we've seen in tobacco shops, vape shops. We also have some photographs to share with you just to show you the level of confusion that it can create. Most of these products are intermingled with other products like gummy bears or gummy rings that are easily accessible to children and to parents. And since there is no ordinance requiring that anybody be carded for Delta 8, it is also a concern.
Oh, my goodness.
Are there any questions for me, though, with respect to the language that we are
Any questions from the committee?
presenting?
I have a couple questions, but they may be for the officers.
I will pass these around, and I will ask Investigator Salinas and Investigator Myers to come up.
So my questions are, Can you give us some examples of where in our city you're seeing these products, and how large of a problem has this become? And are we just being proactive, or is this really an issue going on right now?
So we're seeing it while we're.
Also, could you please just state your name for the record?
I'm Investigator Myers. Standing to the right of me is Investigator Salinas, members of the Aurora Police Department Special Operations Group. So we'll go out there and to a lot of these shops, and we'll look in for compliance checks. During the course of our investigations, we've seen a lot of these items pop up in these shops, easily accessible. The package being opened, where they're like maybe cookies that we've seen, or brownies. So they're in like a container of maybe 10, 15, and then they're open right on the countertop there. So we're seeing it happen throughout the city, multiple locations. And if I don't answer one of your questions, please repeat it. But we've seen it throughout our city. So we've reached out to members of the state police, and they've seen an uptick because of the loophole, kind of like the gray area. And they're seeing more of an uptick overall. So after seeing this, we've done some research and looked into it a little bit, and it's not just a problem here, it's a problem in other jurisdictions that they're looking at more of a local ordinance. So
this is coming in our vape shops and tobacco shops? Is that where we're seeing these things
yes, very
show
prevalent in
up?
those shops.
And they would have just like random cookies, like not pot cookies, like random cookies?
It's
that
at the
would have-
gas stations too.
Gas stations.
Also, so it's
Okay.
not just limited to the shops.
Holy hell.
So it
They're
doesn't
not
hit that
Keebler
threshold.
cookies.
Hmm?
They're not Keebler
And
cookies.
not Keebler cookies. Oh, my goodness. Yeah.
Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, I do. So I'm just trying to fully understand. So the things that are sold in the CBD oil shops and the lotions and all that is completely different than this?
Yes. Correct, yes.
Alderman Smith?
I don't believe there's any discussion other than motion to approve.
Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, so who, at the legal cannabis location, they're able to sell this?
Right now, they are.
They are.
Are you referring to who can sell it in terms of just generally, or?
Yeah, so if you have a cannabis license, I mean, you are official through the state, you're official with the city of Aurora, you have gone through all the bells and whistles to sell cannabis and all the precautions, safety that we have built in there, they're able to sell THC, that. So I'm trying to delineate just the THC and the ones that are the lookalikes. So of course, we don't want any lookalike things anywhere. We don't want packages of cookies with any weird substance in them. But I'm just trying to see where these are actually sold legally. This THC.
This is a difficult question to answer because though the Delta 8, Delta 9 THCO, it has a chemical compound to it. The Department of Agriculture, which does have authority over the dispensaries, they regulate, test everything. This THC, it has a chemical compound, comes from the hemp-derived plant, which is legal under the Farm Bill. However, no one actually tests or is regulating it like the Department of Agriculture. I've had phone calls to the State Department of Agriculture, total loophole. So what could be, what they will market it as is 0.03%, which would make it legal under the Farm Bill. However, no one's actually looking at it, so the chemical compounds added could be much more than that 0.03%. So what is being sold in the cannabis dispensary is actual cannabis, not with the chemical portion of it. It's actual, the plant and the
Okay.
derivatives from there. So this
They're not
is
messing with it because they can give you the real thing.
correct. Without the psychotic chemicals that can come from Delta 8, Delta 9, that hasn't really been tested.
Okay.
And then this, if passed, will eliminate it from them as well too, correct?
Correct. This should not touch CBD products. That is different than the cannabinoid. I can't say all the, Nydia knows how to
Yeah,
say all
that's
the
why I
terms.
said the acronym THC, I don't know. Okay, and of course, our cannabis locations, they have no need to sell any lookalikes because it's only 21 and over going in there. I hope no parents are buying want to get cookies for their kids there, but whatever, we'll let them deal with that. Okay,
I have
I
one
want to try
more
and
question.
delineate all the different
These pictures
places.
that you're
Yes, ma'am.
handing around to us, that children would go in and want that has this product in it?
Yes, you see the packaging, I'll say, I think it says something about how many milligrams of Delta it has on it. Our concerns have been that since no one's regulating or testing it, we don't know, in fact, how much of the Delta 8 is in there. We were given information from Metro West Council of Government with an investigation that was conducted where police department went in and canvassed 21 vendors. 14 of those vendors were marketing and selling Delta 9 products, and the trace amount was way over the 0.03. At max, they had 637.1, and at minimum, it was 4.3. And so that's one of the big concerns, obviously, is how much is actually in there if no one is regulating, testing it regularly or at all.
Wow.
So for now, this would just be something for the city of Aurora. This isn't a state, any kind of state input on this right now, so it'd just be for city of Aurora. So at some point, is there anything working its way through the state for this?
Actually, the feds, something just came out, I think, last week that the DEA, I believe it was the DEA, was looking to promulgate new rules to close the loophole because the Farm Bill is coming to expire. So I think they're trying to close.
So we're well ahead of everybody else. That's great news. So.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Alderman Smith, second by Alderman Franco. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes 4-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, next item on the agenda here, 23-0654, a resolution approving appointments of Caroline Escobedo, Allison Altman, Jensen Coonrad, and Brittany Chavarera to the Aurora Youth Council.
Good afternoon, Alex Voigt from the Mayor's Office here on behalf of Sylvia Vargas today. We have 4 additional appointments to the Youth Council here before you. We have representatives from West Aurora, 2 students from West Aurora, and then 2 students from one student from Oswego East, and then 1 student from East Aurora High School. So we do this evening on the Committee of the Whole agenda also have, I believe, 4 appointments. So Simon is working hard with his team to build up the Youth Council following our graduations last year. So I can take any questions.
Question, comments from the committee?
Motion to approve.
Second. Motion by Alderman Smith, second by Alderman Franco. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Thank you.
Passes 4-0. Last item on the agenda here, 23-0597, disclosure of economic interests and outside employment by officers and employees under city ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Rick Veenstra, Corporation Counsel. 2 weeks ago, we began a discussion about whether or not we could improve the process of local campaign and economic interest disclosures at the RAP Committee, and we had a pretty good conversation about different ideas, different ways we could do it. Since that time, I've kind of worked with, and with the assistance of MOCA, we were able to kind of put together a little bit of a glimpse at what something like that might look at. Also, with the support of the mayor's office, we discussed how something like this may actually fit very well into our open data portal, which will soon be coming online, and this potentially being an expansion of some of the transparency measures that are already underway. So what at least we're envisioning, and these are static slides right now, but if you would look on the city's website under our transparency portal, you might see something like this, would draw people's attention to economic interest and campaign disclosure information. Next screen that you may see after that see if we can advance a slide, would be a few options that you could click to see different types of economic interest disclosures. One would be a click where you'd be able to view all of the disclosed information regarding the elected officials, the mayor and all 12 of the aldermen. Another box would take you to covered positions, where here we would list the departments. We would also add the office of the alderman and the mayor's office to this as well. And you would be able to click on each one of those departments, and the individuals who are covered in each of those departments who are required to file disclosure reports, you would have that information available. And then finally, we would have another page that would cover the covered boards and commissions, looking at planning and zoning, civilian review, human relations commission, civil service commissions, commissions that have the ability to exercise at least some aspect of the city's authority with respect to their duties. So from those screens, you'd be able to get a pretty good look at everybody who is required to file. We would also include somewhere in there a search box where if you wanted to enter somebody's last name, that you'd be able to do that and pull directly to that person's information. So that would certainly be a lot more user-friendly than the method we have right now, where we have 120 of these forms stored in the clerk's office in a static PDF document that's not readily available for anybody's inspection or copying, other than through a FOIA request. What we would look at is, depending on which type of person you clicked on, you would get a data box that would look something like this. This would be an example of a elected officials data box. You would list the name of the elected official, the office that they're holding, who their employer is, if it's not somebody who's a full-time alderperson, where they work. You would also potentially indicate what their non-for-profit leadership is, whether or not they're a member of a board or commission, a non-for-profit board of directors, some community organization, something that has ties to the community beyond their elected official position. Something other than, if you're a member of, for example, one of the suburban municipal leagues, for example, and the city's paying your dues for that, that wouldn't necessarily be something. We'd be looking at bodies that you don't serve on by virtue of your elected position. There'd be a separate box for you to list what business interests you may own or operate within the city, and we would use a definition, something like ownership or management of a particular business entity within the city, and what that would look like. You would basically have a description, and that box would fill out, and you'd be able to see whichever types of entities the elected official would list. There would also be a link to the county clerk's website where the state economic interest disclosure forms are maintained. We're probably not going to be in a position where we can link directly to that website, but we would be in a position where we'd likely be able to link to the general search page. So if somebody wants to search, that's the jumping off point to do that. Similarly, with the campaign disclosures, we would either be for the State Board of Elections, or in some cases, hypothetically, the Federal Elections Commission. We'd have a link where somebody would be able to search by that elected officials committee. One of the disclosures would still be what political committee you have, and that would also populate in that field in terms of, I file friends for whoever with the State Board of Elections, or so-and-so for Congress with the Federal Election Commission. And somebody would be able to take a look at that, know that that committee exists, and either do the searches through the official website, or if they want to go through a Sunshine website that somebody else may be maintaining that also aggregates this kind of campaign data, they'd be able to do essentially the same thing. And then a very similar form would be here. This would be something that we would envision using for employees, also potentially for contractors who hold named positions within an executive pay plan or city offices. You would list the name, the title, the department, the division, whether or not they happen to be an employer contractor, who they're employed with other than the city if there's an outside employment position, whether they have that same type of non-for-profit leadership position, and then also any sorts of statements of economic interest required by the Illinois Governmental Ethics Act. So this is essentially the way that we would propose if the City Council were to move towards doing something a little bit different with respect to the disclosure, having it online, this is the form that we would look at presenting it at.
Any questions or comments from the committee?
So, two things. One, this proposal would eliminate or reduce the amount of work that our clerk has to do, the city has to do, because we really wouldn't be doing a city thing anymore. And two, it would make it easier and more transparent for residents to look this stuff up. It would combine both of those positive results.
The way we would envision, exactly, the way we would envision it doing is the city forms, the paper forms that, or even the fillable PDFs that you're used to right now would go away. We're still looking at how we would implement obtaining the disclosures from the city officials, because there is some information that we collect and will want to collect that's not collected in those state economic forms. What we've been talking about is using the intranet. As you all may be aware of, MOCA is working very hard to build out the Inside 44 website. Have a form that anyone who has access to the city system and is covered can go into that site and fill in the information. And when they hit submit, that certifies, and that is essentially the submission that they have. Potentially then building in how it, with whatever frequency we require that, even a button that allows you to click, all the information is the same, and take care of your responsibility in a much faster timeline. There wouldn't be the requirement for the clerk to manually handle all those things, types of emails reminding you to do this, potentially with timed reminders that could all be automated.
I have a question.
Alderman
Please.
Smith, yeah.
Yes, a couple questions. I think this is wonderful for transparency for our residents, but I do, adding to Alderman Franco's questions, great for the clerk's office, great for the residents, but and maybe you gave an answer in there, it was kind of long-winded. Is that going to change what we do as elected officials in filling out these forms? So you did say that there's going to be additional information that you would need that's that's not there now, and so it's kind of a couple-part questions. How would our filing be different? Are we still doing the two separate filings? And what is it that you're going to be looking for that's not already there?
What we'd be looking at, let's back up. What we'd be looking
Excuse me,
at that's
Rick,
not,
I just want to acknowledge that Alderman Yamas has joined the meeting, so sorry to interrupt you, so.
what we'd be looking at requiring, which is not already there, we'd be taking a look at the existing form and trying to pull out items which are required to be disclosed in the local forms but aren't necessarily captured anywhere else. The specific thing that comes to mind right now is business interest or property owned specifically within the city of Aurora. So something along those lines you would still disclose. You would still type in the political committees that you may have to support your campaign efforts. You would no longer need to go to the State Board of Elections website and manually print out your contributions and affix those, because we would be replacing that function with the link to the website. So if anybody's interested in checking to see what your contributions were from any of the sources at the State Board of Elections, you could just go there and do it, and it's in real time and a much faster update than you would have on these annual reports. So those are the types of things that we would, and how the reporting and disclosure would be changing. Instead of dealing with the fill-in PDF form, you would see something more akin to what you may be experienced when you fill out the economic interest disclosures with the county clerk's office. Simple questions that allow for you to type in an answer. And again, one of the things that we could look at doing is having the ability to say, this information hasn't changed, click and be done with it. So you will still have to do a little bit of minor clicking to capture that additional information that we already have on the forms right now that we still believe need to be captured. If the committee decides and the city council decides that there's additional disclosures that should be captured as well, that would be something you would do there, but it would all be in a much different, easier format that wouldn't necessarily require the same amount of time and trouble, either on the administrative side with the clerks or even with the time that you, as well as the senior city leadership that has to fill it out, would take.
And follow up on that. So would we be implementing it in the portal ourselves, or would we be filling out something separate, sending it to the clerk, and the clerk would be pushing
You would
it
enter
over?
it directly into the portal just like you do with the county clerk's
Okay, that makes
form.
sense. It's skipping,
And then we would be able to, we'd be able to program reminders into the system. You haven't the updated, please confirm that the information is still correct, and keep it that way. So you don't necessarily have to have the same type of annual look back the way the state does it, the way we do it right now. You could have much more timely information disclosed than you would have on an annual form.
And my last thing, and are we looking today to just move it to the next step? We're not really voting on this today. We're not ready to vote on this yet. It looks like it's not completely finished. So we're just kind of agreeing to move forward with this? Is that what we're doing today?
This is to give you guys a concept of what it could look. We still need to finalize, and I'm probably about 75% in the way done with drafting the ordinance. So getting something that looks like legislation that you guys would be able to act on, make changes to, and then make a recommendation to the committee of the whole. If not the next RAP committee, perhaps the RAP committee after that, we should be in a better position. We do want to move forward with this, as I said last time, but the existing system doesn't require the citywide reporting until next May. So we do have some time to get the language right, and we do have some time to get the implementation right. So I don't want to necessarily sit on this for longer than needs to be done, but we do have some time to make sure that we get it right and take a little bit more time with the deliberations on it.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Alderman Bug?
On the card there, when you said there would be a link that would attach our political committees, now would that link just say State Board of Elections, or will it actually say Friends of Joe Smith?
What we would look at doing, there's two places, let me back up to the screen that
And I
shows.
didn't mean to use the
shows
name
that.
Smith, that's just the generic.
And
And I said Joe, not
We would look at.
I know
having
Joe.
Each of the elected officials would say, I file with the State Board of Elections, here's the name of my committee. I might also I might have another committee. Sometimes precinct committee persons may have a separate account, separate from their aldermanic account. Sometimes you may have an alderman running for a different office and may have a different account as well. So you would have those listed there at that first level. Then under links, that's where you would have a link. Probably it would be to the generic State Board of Elections website. The State Board of Elections website does get some criticism from time to time in that the way it is set up, you don't have the ability to easily share direct links to various things. So it may be, at least in its current iteration, very hard to link directly to that, to specific political committees' disclosure forms, but you could certainly link to the State Board of Elections website where somebody could then click on committees and search through their heart's content, essentially.
Okay. And my second question on this is just, so what we attached here is our old original ordinance from 1984.
Correct.
Can we attach the updated? Because of course we updated this even last year. A number of things have been changed in this from 1984. Can we get the most recent?
It's a little bit hard to link into PDF quite that same way because
Okay.
of the way we've done iterations and changes. I would refer you to Chapter 15 of the City Code, which is online, which shows you the complete ethics ordinance, and then the remaining sections are still in that. Are still in Chapter 2 and are online. So it's a little bit harder to print that out in quite the same way, because that was a comprehensive ordinance all done at once, whereas over the course of the last several years, we've done incremental changes, so there's not just one document that shows everything.
Okay. How about if we just upload the changes that we did last year?
I think we can find the ordinance. Now, which changes are you looking at specifically? The
We only
large
did one.
comprehensive?
We only
Chapter
did one
15?
last year. We did, basically it was aldermen soliciting, whatever, sending out letters or
That was the
emails and,
public and private gifts, if I'm not mistaken.
yeah. So if
That-
we put in that section, we can,
I can do that. That's going to be a
the
very,
sections
that's
are
going to be a very tiny part of everything, though, but I can do that if you'd like.
yeah, I guess that whole
Okay.
body, that'd be a good start.
Any other questions or comments?
Get her done.
So then, Kurt, we're just, again, this is just more of an update. There's really nothing. voted on
Yeah,
there.
I don't know. I noticed that the item is on COW. I don't know that there's necessarily anything
Yeah, I saw that as
substantive
well,
to talk to COW about at this point. But I think within the next meeting or two here, we can have something that looks like that's legislative text that you can, work with over a meeting or two before sending it on to COW for its review. And the other aspect that, I'm probably going to talk more about it more in length at the next meeting is the outside employment requirements. Currently, any employee who undergoes any sort of, or wants to undertake any sort of outside employment of any kind, and it's a very broad definition of what employment means, is required to obtain permission from the Chief Human Resources Officer before undertaking it. We may be looking at changing that and trying to right-size the policy, certainly keeping that requirement for department heads and division heads, but in some instances for the more rank and file, if you will, employees, notice to HR with the ability to review for conflict of interest may be the better way of doing it. So,
It makes sense.
unless there's any further questions, I will sit down and be back in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, there's no other items on the agenda.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion adjourned by Alderman Smith, second by Alderman Yamas. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? This is over.
Good meeting.
Yeah, okay.